A Rose by Any Other Name, Part 3, Till Death Do Us Part. Mother, child, and father, family, the Trinity, the classic Trinity. Harvey was deep in thought, remembering Elvira's story as he sat wistfully watching a large family that was visiting one of the residents. The sweet old woman beamed as she cuddled her great-grandchild. Harvey was only half listening to Ken, who was yammering on about some dinner party, making a detail list as the rest of the residents ate lunch, played cards, watched the tube, when suddenly Edith and her cronies wheeled up in their wheelchairs, out of breath.
"Ken, Harvey, wheel us down to the first floor. There's a new resident arriving, and we want to get a gander at him."
Harvey winked at the ladies as he eased out of his chair. Shameful ladies gawking at the fresh meat. The ladies all giggled as Harvey and Ken wheeled the chairs by Elvira's room. She was puttering with the flowers in her window box. Harvey peeked in. "Elvira, coming to spy on the new arrival?"
"With aphids threatening my roses? Impossible."
She returned to her flowers, and the rest of the ladies all wheeled hurriedly to the elevator. Ken and Harvey gently helped the ladies over the bump. Edith was giddy as a schoolgirl.
"Rumor has it he's quite handsome."
"I shouldn't say this," gossiped Joan, "but Nurse Vaughn told me in confidence that he has quite a lot of money." The elevator stopped at the first floor, and everyone wheeled down the hall to the lounge to wait. Hermione was fluffing her hair.
"I hear he's a show business person. Started out in vaudeville, was in some movies, was even a stuntman."
"Criminy," laughed Harvey. "How do you ladies find all this gossip out?"
"Oh, Hermione tells everyone she's deaf, and the nurses gossip around her because they think she can't hear."
"Hermione, is that true?"
"What? I can't hear you."
And they all cackled. They watched a van pull up. A daughter, 35-ish, got out, then grandkids tumbled out and started unloading bric-a-brac. A lamp, pictures, boxes. The ladies gossiped and ogled as they waited for the daughter to help the new arrival out. Edith was eyeballing his personal possessions.
"Look at that gorgeous Tiffany lamp. It's an antique."
Joan put on her spectacles and squinted. "He's got 6 suitcases. He must be quite dapper." The biddies all spied as the daughter helped him out of the van into his wheelchair. He was handsome, buzzed the ladies. 70-ish, good teeth, slim, silver hair, impeccably dressed. The ladies all swooned. Edith whipped out her lipstick and applied a fresh coat. Hermione, never taking her eyes off the new resident, grasped for the lipstick.
"Can I borrow that when you're done, dear? Oh, he's a dream."
Combs, powder puffs, and perfume were produced from purses as the women all preened. Nurse Pritchard's was holding the front door open as the daughter wheeled Jasper in. She smiled at the biddies, pinching their cheeks to create the effect of a girlish blush. "Jasper Rollins, meet the lovely ladies of Glenvale." And at that moment Jasper Rollins winked, then tipped the cap that his daughter had plopped on his head. Ken and Harvey, enjoying the spectacle, went over to help with his suitcases. A few minutes later, down in Jasper's room, his daughter was talking with Nurse Pritchard's as the grandchildren helped old Jasper get settled. A granddaughter hung some crayon scrawlings. Ken and Harvey moved in boxes as they eavesdropped.
"Grandpa, I brought these from home, the ones I drew of zoo animals, remember?"
The daughter was conferring with Nurse Pritchard's. "He really can't manage on his own. It takes him quite a while to get up in the morning by himself." Meanwhile, the grandchildren were bopping around poor old infirm Jasper Rollins.
"Gramps, Daddy says even though they're sticking you in here, we can still go fishing sometimes. Maybe next weekend?"
"Nurse Pritchard's, his gums give him no end of trouble, so let's put him on diet plan B. No meats or fruits, no corn on the cob."
"Which station do you want on the TV, Gramps? They've got that cable station with those old movies you like."
"Oh, another thing. He's slipped a few times bathing. I'm terrified he'll break his hip. There should always be someone with him to bathe him." "Certainly, Mrs. Rollins," said Nurse Pritchard, making a note on her clipboard. The daughter then turned to her aging father. Dad, I think you'll be happy here. Your pills are on the table. Oh, I put your Audubon calendar up, and we will visit every Sunday. But, kids, we better go before traffic gets crazy. The daughter gave him a kiss, then gathered her children and headed out. Jasper Rollins waved, tears in his eyes, as they piled back into the big family van. Ken and Harvey stood silently, taking it all in. Ken leaned over and whispered to Harvey, God, that is so sad. I mean, think of what it must be like, that moment when you leave the place that's been your home all your life and they plant you in this room. I mean, this room that you realize you're going to be stuck in till the day you die. Shh, said Harvey, nudging Ken. You don't want the poor guy to hear you. Jasper Rollins stared forlornly until the van disappeared. Then he went into high gear. He took the religious tape out of the recorder and popped in Big Band. He took his laxative box and pulled out a cigar. He opened the Monopoly box to reveal cards and poker chips. He got out his wheelchair, yanked down the bird calendar, and put up one with naked ladies. He unballed a pair of socks and pulled out shot glasses. He opened a bottle of Listerine and poured 3 shots. Ken and Harvey watched this transformation with gaping mouths. Glenfiddich, cackled Jasper, 12 years old and smooth as the skin on a prom queen. Harvey and Ken, both speechless, each took a glass. Harvey was the first one to get his voice back. Sir, you can obviously take care of yourself just fine. If it's not too nosy of me, what exactly are you doing here? Came to meet women. Cripes, I got so bored living with my daughter, I thought I was gonna die. Nothing but soap operas and TV dinners and Tupperware parties. And those damn kids get under my skin. More Listerine, boys? The boys nodded in awe as Jasper poured. Here's the deal, $10 every time you bring me a bottle of scotch, on top of the cost of the shivas. Poker Wednesday and Saturday nights. I sent a change of address to Playboy. You're welcome to 'em when I'm done, but pinch 'em before I see 'em, and I swear you're dead meat. Savvy? Harvey and Ken nodded wordlessly. This was clearly a man to be reckoned with. And suddenly, pretty Nurse Vaughn, looking particularly sexy today, popped her head in. Hello, Jasper Rollins. I'm Nurse Vaughn. I will be in to give you a sponge bath in just a few minutes. She left. Jasper winked at the boys. Harvey and Ken burst out laughing. Harvey stared at Jasper, awestruck. What an operator! I've been trying to get Nurse Vaughn to give me a sponge bath for months. Experience, son, comes with age. But right now, I gotta ask you two to leave. It's Mr. Bubble Hour.
And the big band finished their song with a big crescendo.
And bright and early next morning, Harvey wheeled Jasper Rollins into breakfast. Nurse Pritchard's breezed down the hall. Well, Mr. Rollins, I hope your first night's stay was a pleasant one. And how was your sponge bath this morning? Oh, I guess it was all right, Miss Pritchard's. Well, we're serving piping hot bran muffins for breakfast. Oh, great, I'll be in a crapper all morning. Harvey smirked and wheeled Jasper into the cafeteria. The ladies all stopped eating to eye him. Jasper was dressed impeccably. His thick, wavy silver hair was combed perfectly, and his steel blue eyes sparkled. A murmur went through the cafeteria. Jasper tapped Harvey on the arm. Wheel me to an empty table. I want to scope the babes. Harvey chuckled as he wheeled Jasper closer. Jasper scanned the hens, unimpressed, but Harvey was impressed with Jasper, as were all of the female residents. Harvey shook his head, whistled, and whispered in Jasper's ear. You have got it, buddy. Charisma with a capital K. You could have any one of the dames in here. Don't want just any dame, my boy. She's got to be magical. Well, cue romantic music. Elvira. Elvira Peachtree Callahan was on the sun porch alone gardening. She wore a straw hat, calico dress, and her face looked radiant in the sunshine. Her eyes sparkled, and her cheeks were as pink as the roses she tended so lovingly. Jasper Rollins stared. "Who is she? She's beautiful." "Good taste," said Harvey. "Elvira Peachtree Callahan. Remarkable, yes?" "Callahan, Irish! God, I love Irish women." Jasper watched as Elvira snipped a rose, held it close, and inhaled the fragrance. The women all noticed Jasper's fascination with Elvira. The murmur of the other ladies sounded like angry bees. "You've broken hearts already," said Harvey, shaking his head in amazement. "Jasper, what is your secret?" Treat me right, buckaroo. Maybe I'll teach you one day. But for now, scram. I'm going to pitch some woo." And Jasper got up out of his wheelchair and walked over to the porch. Elvira sensed his presence and looked up. And now cue the romantic music in your head to swell, to grow lush and louder as Jasper and Elvira talk, Harvey watching. He glanced at the jealous expressions of the other ladies and chuckled to himself. Ah, yes, the courtship of Elvira and Jasper. In her room, Elvira showed Jasper her photo albums. He listened fascinated, almost reverently, as Elvira told the story behind each picture. The rec room, Elvira and Jasper watched Jeopardy. They played against each other, keeping score, as between them they knew every single answer. The gardens, Elvira and Jasper sat watching a glorious sunset. Harvey walked out on the balcony and saw them. He smiled a wistful, sentimental smile. And the monthly tea dance. An old tune wafted out of the old phonograph, but the blush of new love was in the air. Jasper whirled Elvira around. Her skirt swirled like a wave around her still shapely calves. Nurse Pritchard eyed them warily. She was flanked by Ken and Harvey. "Darn it, this makes me nervous," she muttered. "Jasper's daughter doesn't even want him out of that wheelchair. She was very clear about that, and here he is hoofing it up like he's Gene Kelly." "Oh, but they do look lovely together, n'est-ce pas?" said Ken, who was charmed by the scene. "I must remind Lisa to have waltz music at our wedding reception." "Well, it won't be lovely when he falls and breaks his hip," sputtered Pritchard. Harvey, who was serving punch to residents, rolled his eyes as he heard her whine. Nearby, Elvira laughed as Jasper took her into a deep dip and whirled her around. "That's it," announced Pritchard. "If Jasper hurts himself, his daughter will probably slap a lawsuit on us. I'm stopping it now." And suddenly, Harvey had his hand on Nurse Pritchard's arm. "Over my dead body." She looked at Harvey aghast. "Get your hands off me! Move aside, now!" Harvey's face softened, and he smiled at her. He glanced over at Elvira and Jasper, then looked back at Nurse Pritchard, staring deep into her eyes. "Oh, sweetie, look at their faces. How can you ruin it?" "Well," she said, softening, "I suppose just this once. But Harvey, when he's in bed with a broken hip, you know who'll be emptying his bedpans." She walked off. Ken, who had watched the entire confrontation, said nothing. The fall days were flying by. Soon it would be winter. Everything that had been a beautiful blaze of color just a few days before was now dying, and it had been snowing lightly on and off for the last few days. Harvey was pushing his cart and then stopped pushing it when he got to her door. He knocked on Elvira's door and poked his head in. "Jasper, dear, is that you? Come in." No, sorry, Elvira, it's just me, Harvey." "Well, hello, stranger. Where have you been?" "Well, three's a crowd." "Yes, I guess Jasper and I have been spending quite a bit of time together, but still, I miss your company, my dear. A lot." "Well, I miss your stories, Elvira." "Well, Harvey, I have some news. Jasper and I are getting married." Harvey swallowed hard, taking this in. He sat down. "Really? Is it... really?" "Yes, Harvey, really." "Oh, well, that's wonderful." You don't sound like you think it's wonderful. Well, of course I'm happy for you. It's just so sudden.
I know. We're getting married next weekend, Harvey.
But next weekend you just met him. What's the rush?
We're both over 70 is the rush.
Yeah, but Elvira, you're not... I mean, this is not like...
We're crazy about each other, Harvey. Why should we wait?
Harvey paced, oddly tense, angry even, and deep in thought. But what about Andrew? Wasn't he the great love of your life? I mean, frankly, I never thought you'd marry again.
Elvira came over and sat down next to Harvey. Of course he was, Harvey, but Andrew died in 1937. I think half a century is long enough to mourn, don't you?
Well, I mean, sure, it's just...
Listen, I adored Andrew. Loved the man with all my heart, always will, but Harvey, I didn't die with him. I'm still vital and vibrant and very much alive.
Harvey softened. Yes, you are, Elvira. Yes, you are.
So, it's settled then. Next week, I'm going to stand up in front of all my friends in a room filled with flowers, a stack of presents, all the things I didn't have when I eloped, and I will become Jasper's wife. And Harvey, I want you to give me away.
Harvey stood up. Elvira, I'd be proud to. He kissed her on the cheek and then looked at her gravely. One thing, though, Elvira, you aren't rushing into this because you're in trouble, are you? Elvira burst into a cackle, and Harvey laughed too, beaming at her sweetly. Well, Elvira, I do love weddings now. What can I do to help? A shopping mall. A beautiful Saturday morning. Harvey hurried, his lanky legs making huge strides, as Ken followed, jabbering frantically. Harvey, you're not going to do this. Sure I am, and you're going to help. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. Then why'd you come along? I came along to talk you out of it. Ken, do you remember what you're supposed to do?
Yeah, to stop you. You can go to jail for this. It's stealing.
No, it's borrowing.
Oh, like you're going to put it back?
Sure. What, you think Elvira's going to use it at her next wedding? She's 72 years old, for Christ's sake. Harvey stopped in front of a bridal shop and looked at the beautiful bride mannequin. Crowning her was a magnificent white veil that extended yards and yards beyond the dress. Harvey, don't do this. Look, Ken, Elvira wants the wedding she never had, a veil as long as a princess in a storybook, to trail behind her with rose petals strewn all over it. Ken, it's not much for an old lady to ask. How can we deny her this?
Oh, like you can't buy one, like everyone else?
Do you have a spare $300 lying around, Ken?
No, which means I don't have the money to bail you out when you get arrested for this.
Relax. It's in the name of romance.
Now follow me, and remember, when the bells tinkle.
Tiny bells over the door jingled as they entered the bridal boutique. A saleswoman looked up. She was 50-ish, with dyed white blonde hair, too much makeup, and she wore jewelry capable of drowning out human conversation. She approached Harvey and Ken.
May I help you?
Yeah, see this big guy here? Said Harvey. Well, he's getting married, and I'm his best man, and I got elected to help dress him.
Congratulations, the clerk effused. When's the big day?
Next month.
Next week,
said Harvey and Ken, but at the same time. Harvey ruffled Ken's hair and grinned winningly at the smiling clerk, who smelled money. Love, said Harvey. Clouds the mind. So, fix him with the works? Can you do that for me, gorgeous?
Of course. Now, is the wedding daytime or night? Has the bride picked her dress? How formal is the affair?
As she rambled, measuring Ken with her tape measure, Harvey slipped to the front of the store. He winked at Ken, then slipped through the door leading to the window display. The saleswoman was oblivious. Meanwhile, Harvey, in the window, was sizing up the mannequin. He muttered to the mannequin in a Groucho Marx voice, "You really must loosen up, my dear. It's quite all right on your wedding night." And at the same time, the saleswoman was holding up a ghastly, ruffled peach shirt to Ken, gushing, as, Back at the window, Harvey was having trouble with the veil pinned to the dummy's hair. As he was pulling the pins out, he spotted a security guard cruising the mall. Harvey quickly adopted an effeminate pose, fussing with the veil. The guard looked up, and Harvey winked at him coyly. The guard hurried on, disgusted. Harvey then grabbed the veil, wig and all, and stuffed it in his jacket. The veil seemed endless. Harvey slipped out of the store, the bells tinkling. The saleswoman was now talking cummerbunds to Ken, holding up hideous plaids and paisleys.
Some people think plaid is a bit much, but I think it makes a statement, different, bold, of course.
Ken smiled nervously.
I gotta go. I just remembered I'm supposed to meet my bride-to-be at the Orange Whip stand. Bye.
Ken flew out, leaving the woman stymied. In a humph, she started to put things away, her jewelry clanging, and then she saw the bald bride in the window. She gasped. Out in the mall parking lot, Harvey was laughing as he sprinted like an Olympic runner, holding the veil over his head. It trailed behind him in the breeze. Ken was running behind as Harvey, in a panic, hurried towards the car.
Stop waving it around. You'll get us arrested. Criminy.
When they were safely back at the apartment, Ken immediately began straightening things, as he always did when he was upset, but Harvey was again deep in thought, pacing, chomping thoughtfully on one of Ken's frozen zero bars. Ken, what are your ideas about a bridal shower for Elvira? Ken stopped and stared at Harvey in disbelief. Was there no end to this guy's antics? Harvey was totally unfazed by what they had just done, and not the least guilt-ridden.
Harvey, I thought ladies were supposed to give bridal showers.
Are you kidding? Those old broads are so jealous of Elvira for snagging Jasper. She'll be lucky if they chip in for a toaster. Harvey tossed the zero wrapper at the trash can, missing it. I want to do something really special for her, Ken. That is something she'll never, ever forget for as long as she lives. Harvey stopped pacing and glowered at Ken. And don't think it, don't say it. Just because some of those folks are old doesn't mean they don't have the same dreams about their future, Ken, and the same desires and urges. Urges. That's it. And suddenly Harvey slapped his thigh. Urges! I've got it. That's it. What? Said Ken, dreading the answer. What do you have? Oh, God. This is going to be tricky with Herr Pritchard's on the beat. Harvey ran to the phone and dialed a number. Yeah, Steve? Harvey. Yeah, it has been a while. Look, are you still working your way through med school? Oh, good. I was afraid maybe the dean got to you. Look, I really need your services. Harvey put his hand over the receiver and turned to Ken. Ken, what day does the supply truck deliver to Glenvale? Thursdays, in the afternoon at 3, like clockwork. Why? Steve, can you be at Glenvale Thursday afternoon, 2:45? Oh, great! Oh, you are a lifesaver. Bye. Ken was looking very worried. Harvey, tell me what you're up to. Better if you don't know, said Harvey, dialing again. Hello? May I speak to Bonnie? Yeah. Okay. The snake's name is Clarence. Yeah, I'll wait. Bonnie, it's Harv. Look, you're coming to Glenvale on Thursday as usual? Fantastic. Listen, are you still driving that dented-up old Volare? Yeah? Yeah, well, how would you like a new bumper? And so Thursday, the big day, finally rolled around. Ken wasted no time in making a beeline to Glenvale after his last class. Harvey hurried down the hall whistling as Ken scurried to keep up. I wish you'd tell me what the heck is going on. Look, I didn't tell you before because I knew you'd chicken out, Ken, but we are going to make a lot of old ladies very happy. Trust me. Now, Ken, your job is crucial. This operation will take exactly 3 minutes and 27 seconds. Timing is everything. And then Harvey whispered in Ken's ear in low conspiratorial tones as Ken punctuated with outbursts. What? But you can't. On purpose? A few minutes later, Ken bustled by the nurse's station and saw Nurse Pritchard, who smiled genuinely at Ken. He's so clean-cut, not like that Looney Tune Harvey, she thought to herself. Good afternoon, ma'am, said Ken. I see you're here at your station as usual. Hi, Ken. How's that sociology report coming? Oh, it's just fine. And where might Dr. Goldblum happen to be right now? Well, in his office, like always. Perfect. I think I'll pop my head in. Meanwhile, at the rear of the building, Harvey opened a side door. A tall, handsome, muscular young man, wearing a suit and carrying a jam box, entered. Meanwhile, in Dr. Goldblum's office, Goldblum had his radio tuned to the classical station. Blue Danube Waltz wafted out of the speakers. Ken peeked in. Hello, sir. Checking in. Strauss. I love Strauss. Dr. Goldblum looked up, annoyed. I'm kind of busy here, Ken. Perfect. Sorry, sir. I'll go get busy as well. Meanwhile, in the hallway, a squadron of old ladies careened to the rec room. Some hobbled with canes and walkers. Others wheeled themselves with amazing speed, like race car drivers. Ken and Harvey pushed the wheelchairs of less agile ladies, and Nurse Vaughn even wheeled one woman's bed with the IV still attached. Meanwhile, at the nurse's station, Nurse Pritchard sat in her chair, on her hand-crocheted cushion, eating a tuna on white. And down the hall in Dr. Goldblum's office, Goldblum was humming along to the Blue Danube, while in the rec room, the ladies were waiting in a circle. Elvira had her camera ready. Nurse Vaughn stood by the jam box, her finger poised on the start button. Ken stood by the window, looking down at the loading dock in the back of the building, and he watched as... Down on the loading dock, Harvey opened the back doors of the building. Dr. Goldblum's office was just down the hall, and the strains of Blue Danube wafted out. Harvey paced, nervously looking at Ken's watch that he had borrowed. Some 20 yards away, Bonnie was sitting in her dented Volare. A truck that said Green's Medical Suppliers lurched into the rear parking lot. It stopped. The beefy driver leaned out to Harvey, yelling over the waltz music. Hey, got a big delivery here. Cots, diapers, crap like that. That's fine, said Harvey. You can unload them on this dock. Hey, buddy, I ain't paid to unload. You unload them. Fine, sir. Whatever. It's kind of a tight squeeze, though. Let me guide you, said Harvey, waving his arms. Come on back. You got plenty of room. 10 feet or more. Keep coming. Keep coming. Keep coming. Meanwhile, from his vantage point in the upstairs window, Ken watched what was about to happen, smiling in spite of himself. He put his hand up, preparing to signal Nurse Vaughn, as down on the loading dock, Harvey smiled at the driver, gesturing broadly. Plenty of room. Keep coming. Keep coming. Oh, wait, better stop. Suddenly, there was an ear-splitting crash. Down the hall, Dr. Goldblum, sitting in his office, looked up. What? Hell? He bolted out of his office towards the dock. At the nurse's station, Nurse Pritchard's dropped her tuna sandwich. What the heck? She bolted from her station and also ran down the hall. Everyone converged on the loading dock where the driver was screaming at Harvey, who was smiling up at the building. The minute Harvey saw Pritchard's and Goldblum on the loading dock, he looked at the upstairs window and gave Ken the thumbs up. Ken, in turn, gave Nurse Vaughn the signal, and she turned on the tape deck. Music started thumping as the muscular young man in the suit danced into the circle of ladies and began to strip. Meanwhile, down on the loading dock, the driver, Nurse Pritchard's, and Dr. Goldblum were all screaming at Harvey. It's not my fault, he protested. I was directing the driver back, and he didn't stop when I said stop. I wasn't driving the truck. You little asshole, you kept saying you got plenty of room. Dr. Goldblum had his hands on his hips, cussing. Let's just get the insurance information and get on with it. I can't have this disturbance, bellowed Pritchard. I have heart patients, and this noise is terrible for them. Meanwhile, back in the rec room, the old ladies clapped and shrieked as the sexy dancer peeled off his jacket, tie, shirt, then went for his belt. Ken watched the drama unfolding on the loading dock from the rec room window, smiling at Harvey. But The drama wasn't over yet. No, it most certainly was not over yet. Bonnie, close to the loading dock, was sitting in her car with the window down, and she heard everyone screaming. She started her car, a wicked smile on her face. The truck driver, pissed as hell, got back in his truck and started the engine. "I'm moving my truck so I can check the damage. I'll tell you one thing, this ain't coming out of my paycheck." "Lardass, where'd you get your license anyway? At a Walmart 2-for-1 sale?" yelled Harvey, purposely goading the driver. "Why, you little pissant, I should beat the crap out of you." And the driver was looking at Harvey as he said this, not looking where he was going as he backed up. Big mistake. Bonnie pulled out of her parking space just as the driver was moving forward, but looking at Harvey and cussing him out. Another ear-splitting crash. Peeking down from the upstairs rec room window, Ken howled in spite of himself. Behind him, the ladies leered at the dancer, who was grinding around only in his bikini briefs. They grabbed at him when he danced too close. Meanwhile, down at the loading dock, sirens, police cars. Dr. Goldblum threw up his hands. Nurse Pritchard was cussing out Bonnie. The driver was telling the cops what happened. And Harvey stood in the middle of it all, smirking. He looked up at Ken and winked. As, in the rec room, the stripper played up to the guest of honor, Elvira. He took his necktie and threw it around her. Elvira got up, and everyone applauded as she danced with him. One little old lady waved a $1 bill at the stripper, and he gyrated over to her. Suddenly, all the little old ladies ripped open their change purses and fished for bills. But back down on the loading dock, the police and the gang on the dock had all settled down to fill out insurance forms. Harvey waited until they were completely engrossed, then he slipped away. Harvey took the stairs 3 at a time and ran into the rec room. He watched, laughing and enjoying all the old ladies' delight. The hunk dancer had all kinds of bills hanging out of his G-string. He encored, bowed, then jogged over to his pal Harvey, clutching his wad of bills. Harvey clapped him on the back and shook his hand. "Oh, Steve, you were a hit, a huge hit. You don't know how much I appreciate this. Come on, Ken and I will buy you a beer." "Now, big exam tomorrow. Gotta study. Maybe after finals." "Steve, I really don't know how to thank you." "Hey, Harv, the look on their faces and the change in my crotch is thanks enough. Well, I'm out of here." But Ken was still keeping a watchful eye on the window. "Psst, Harvey, it looks like things are finishing up on the dock." Suddenly, Harvey was alert. "Hey, ladies, back to your stations." It was as though a reel of film were running in reverse as the ladies wheeled, walked, even ran back to their rooms before Pritchard and Goldblum could get wise. Ken and Harvey and Nurse Vaughn helped the darlings along, and everybody was in stitches. Well, back down on the loading dock, police got in their cruisers. Pritchard's, Goldblum, Bonnie, and the driver were still cussing each other out, although in Bonnie's case it was all staged, of course. Suddenly, Harvey reappeared. Dr. Goldblum scowled. "Where the hell were you? The cops wanted to talk to you." Forget it. Delinquent prick. Whatever happened to make you guys picking up trash on the side of the road, anyway? Pritchard's was walking behind them, glaring at Bonnie and Harvey. When they were safely out of range, Bonnie and Harvey burst into gales of laughter. Back in the rec room, the ladies, trying not to look as breathless and flushed as they felt, stared at the TV sadly, crocheted, played cards. Nurse Pritchard marched in and looked around. Everything seemed to be in order, and then she glanced down. There were sequins on the floor, just a few. She picked one up, examined it, then hurried over to the window and stared suspiciously at Harvey and Bonnie, sharing laughs on the loading dock. Harvey looked up, saw Nurse Pritchard's glaring, and he blew her a kiss. The days flew by, and finally it came, November 17th, the appointed day of Elvira Peachtree Callahan's wedding to Jasper Rollins. Oh, the Glenvale rec room had been completely transformed. White crepe paper and fold-out wedding bells festooned the room. There were flowers everywhere, rows of chairs, a big table of gifts. Glenville residents, dressed in their best, gossiped and hovered. Bonnie flirted shamelessly with Dr. Goldblum, who was flattered by her attentions. Ken scurried around, making sure everything was just so, and then Harvey walked in. Everybody oohed and awed. He wore a full tuxedo, and he really looked quite grand. Ken came scurrying up, an amazed look on his face. "Wow! Great tux! Where did you—" "Oh, no. You stole it, didn't you? You stole it!" "No. I had it." "You did? What kind of person owns a tailored tuxedo?" Ken couldn't help but notice Harvey not only dodged the question, but he quickly changed the subject. "Hey, Ken, you like the flowers?" "Yeah, Harvey, they must have been very expensive." Harvey just smiled wickedly and winked. "Well, I think I'll check on Elvira." Down the hall in Elvira's room, Nurse Pritchard's fussed with Elvira's veil, misty as any mother. Harvey spied on them from the hallway. Nurse Pritchard seemed almost human. "Oh, Elvira, you look so beautiful. I think I'm going to cry." Elvira beamed at her. "Oh, I have a feeling you'll be a bride before you know it." "Oh, Elvira, that's the silliest thing Oh, just a minute. I have something for you." Nurse Pritchard's pulled out a gaily wrapped package from a big shopping bag. Elvira was tickled. People didn't give old people gifts very often. "Oh, dear," Elvira said, and now both women were close to a crying jag. "Nurse Pritchard, you didn't have to get me anything." Elvira opened it. Inside was a beautiful white lace nightgown. Elvira oohed and awed over the workmanship. "What, this is lovely. It's all hand embroidery. When on earth did you find the time?" "All those long night shifts. I was saving it for, well, an occasion like this." "Oh, Elvira, it's going to look so pretty on you." In the hall, Harvey smiled, moved by this rare side of the imposing Nurse Pritchard's. After a moment, he ambled in. Elvira beamed. "Harvey, dear, I was afraid you wouldn't get here in time to give me away. And don't you look grand?" Pritchard's gave Harvey the once-over, impressed and smiling in spite of herself. "Yes, you do clean up nicely, Harv. Well, I had better check on the groom." She left them alone. Elvira whirled in front of the mirror. Harvey smiled. "Elvira, you look beautiful. Jasper is a very lucky man." "I have to confess, I feel like a blushing bride of 19. Harvey took her hands in his. "Elvie, are you sure this is what you want?" "What a silly question, and at a silly time." "But you've never said that you love him." Elvira stopped preening a moment and sat next to Harvey. "Oh, I do. In my way. I respect him. Harvey, of course I don't feel for him what I felt for Andrew. I mean, that was for life. But the thing is, Harvey, I don't want to be alone any more." Harvey mulled this over. "That's funny. I like being alone. Sometimes it's what I like best about my life." Elvira shrugged. "Well, dear, the thing is, as you get older, it's odd. You can live with failures and losses and disappointments, but being alone, to get older and older all by yourself and die alone, that is the worst of it. Yes, Harvey, Andrew would have wanted this for me." Back in the rec room, Nurse Vaughn put a record on the phonograph as Nurse Pritchard's, as bridesmaid, marched in solemnly. Everyone turned to look at Elvira. She marched down the aisle with Harvey, who held her arm, proud as any papa, as Ken scurried behind, sort of a flower girl, if you will, unhooking the veil that kept getting caught on wheelchairs and sprinkling rose petals. Jasper stood next to the priest, beaming. When they reached the front, Harvey stepped aside and Jasper took Elvira's arm. The priest beamed at the couple, then the crowd, and began. "We are gathered here today with this man and this woman, Well, it took hardly any time at all before Ken, Bonnie, and Nurse Pritchard stood sobbing, alternately yanking tissues from a box. Harvey stood up front, smiling, as the priest declared Elvira and Jasper to be man and wife. Renewed sobs burst forth from the trio. "Jasper, you may kiss your bride." Well, Jasper took Elvira in his arms and gave her a passionate kiss. The ladies all watched with envy and fascination. A couple of them gasped audibly.
And then, of course, there was the reception. Jasper and Elvira danced their first dance to their song. Applause all around. Ken looked on dreamily.
I can't wait to get married. Marriage is so romantic.
Harvey looked at Ken and chuckled. Bonnie and Dr. Goldblum waltzed by. It was all so wonderful. Wedding cake, punch, food, partying. Harvey and Ken stood on the periphery, their plates loaded, each making faces as they sampled the dishes. Harvey spit his punch in a plant. "This tastes like piss." "No sugar," said Ken. "Diabetics here, you know." "And what the hell is this glop?" It's unsalted taco salad. You know, salt's bad for their blood pressure." I'm almost afraid to ask about the wedding cake.
It's Nurse Pritchard's special recipe. Sorghum and bran.
I should never have put you two in charge of food. Hey, Ken, you want to go for Chinese after this? Sweet and sour pork, huh? That's a plan, Harv. Jasper and Elvira, beaming and laughing, whirled up to Ken and Harvey.
"Well, I'm afraid this is goodbye," giggled Elvira. "We're leaving in just a few minutes. We're off to start our honeymoon."
"Ooh," said Ken. "Where are you spending your honeymoon?" "Elvira's room. I'm still packing," said Jasper, staring lustily at his new bride.
"Until day after tomorrow, that is. That's when the private nurse and Jasper and I are jetting to the Bahamas. Oh, it's going to be so romantic."
Ken beamed at her. "Elvira, if I have half as much zest for life as you do when I'm your age, I will be a happy man." But Harvey jabbed Ken. "You shouldn't talk about her age on her wedding day."
"It's quite all right," giggled Elvira like a schoolgirl. "Let me tell you something, boys. There are some things that only get better with age."
Harvey laughed lustily. Jasper smiled at Elvira. "Speaking of which, my dear, don't you think it's time we started that honeymoon?" Well, a few minutes later, all the single girls gathered as Elvira threw the bouquet. Nurse Pritchard caught it, and everyone applauded. Then everyone lined up at the door and threw rice as Elvira and Jasper ran by. They dashed to Elvira's room and shut the door. Harvey watched Nurse Pritchard's waving and smiling tearfully as she clutched the bouquet. A few minutes later, Nurse Pritchard was sitting at the nurse's station, staring at her bouquet. Harvey left Ken to finish cleaning up and sidled over to her. "You know something? You're not such a bad broad after all."
"You know how to sweep a woman off her feet, Harvey."
Harvey picked up the bouquet. "I'm a very superstitious guy. Who's the lucky groom?"
"I'm already married, Harvey, to my work." And she glanced at her watch. "Well, not that I'm not enjoying this, but it's bedtime, Harv."
Suddenly, a loud buzzing and the station lit up. Nurse Pritchard jumped up.
"Oh, my God! Room 116, that's Elvira's room."
Harvey, Ken, and Nurse Pritchard all ran down the hall. A cemetery. A winter day, but surprisingly balmy. A priest stood at the head of the grave, as mourners grieved. "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me." There was a battalion of wheelchairs near the bus, short walk from the grave. Ken stood next to Harvey, who had Elvira on his arm. Elvira held a single rose. The priest finished up, and Elvira sighed.
"Poor Jasper. Feel like it's my fault."
"Oh, don't say that, Elvira."
"He's right, ma'am," added Ken. "No one could have known." "I'll say this, though," sighed Elvira. "Jasper sure died a happy man."
And then Harvey laughed out loud. The ladies gasped and muttered. Elvira took a last sad look at the coffin, and dropped a rose on it as they lowered it into the ground.
"Oh, well, easy come, easy go."
An hour later, the bus had returned to Glenvale. The residents were tucked back in their rooms, and Ken found himself once again on the phone trying to explain to his future boss, Mr. Briggs, why he had once again missed the start of his internship. Nurse Pritchard, sitting nearby, looked on sympathetically.
"Yes, sir, I know I made a commitment, but, well, funerals aren't something you can plan for." Yes, I can start next. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, all right, yes. Goodbye, sir."
Nurse Pritchard sat down and smiled sympathetically.
"Boss giving you a hard time, Ken?"
"Boss to be. I'm not even officially working for him yet, but I can't lose this internship. It's the biggest tax law firm in the state."
"Oh, well, I guess if death isn't a good excuse, what is?"
"You're right. What a week," sighed Nurse Pritchard. "A wedding and a funeral all in 72 hours. She sipped her tea and looked around.
"So, Ken, where's your lesser half, anyway?"
Ma'am, why do you dislike Harvey so much?"
He's wild, Ken, dangerous. There's something about him."
She looked at the wedding decorations stuck in a corner.
"Well, I guess we should get rid of that stuff, Ken. You want it?" "No, I'll toss it in the dumpster." "Fine. And, Ken, thanks for everything."
Down in Elvira's room, Harvey stood by the door watching Elvira as she stared out the window at the sunset. He stepped in uneasily. "Elvira, you going to be okay?"
"Oh, yes. I didn't know Jasper long enough to get too attached."
"Then why do I get the feeling something else is wrong?"
"Oh, it's nothing. It's nothing."
Outside in the hall, Ken, who was carrying the box by Elvira's room to the trash, heard voices. He stopped and eavesdropped on Elvira and Harvey, intrigued. Harvey went up to Elvira, who was standing by the window. "Elvira, talk to me." Elvira passed Harvey without looking at him, staring out the window.
"Just that one day it hits you, Harvey. All the doors have shut. All those things you were so sure you were going to do someday, they'll never happen."
Harvey started to interrupt, but Elvira pressed on.
"You plan, you scheme, you envision from the time you're a kid. Oh, I thought I was going to do so much, Harv."
"But, Elvira, you've done lots of wonderful things."
"Yes, dear, but you never imagine that list ending. Jasper and I, we were even going to get a little place. I'd planned a backyard full of flowers, and we would travel. When you're with someone, you just naturally start to plan things."
"I know."
"I suppose I should face it. This is all that's left, right, Harvey?"
"What is?"
This room. Glenvale Arts and Crafts on Thursdays and Fish on Fridays and annual visits from distant relatives and a little flower box outside my window."
"Come on, Elvira, don't be silly. Why, you've lots of things left to do, places you can visit and pictures to take and all kinds of—"
"Harvey, stop. We've never lied to each other, not since that first day I found you rooting through my things.
Don't start now. I'm right, aren't I? This is the end of the line. I need to accept it, so tell me." Harvey said nothing, but looked at Elvira and nodded yes.
"And I'm never going to win the big prizes for my picture, or get married again, or get invited to the White House, or drive myself to the beauty parlor, or see Venice at sunset, am I, Harvey?"
"Well, I'm afraid not this time around, no, Elvira." She walked to the closet and stroked the veil from her wedding dress.
"You know what I think I'll miss most, though? Dancing. Oh, I used to love to dance."
Harvey went over to her tape deck and put on the Sinatra music, that old feeling. Ken peeked in. Harvey went up to Elvira and offered his hand. "May I have this dance?" Elvira smiled. Harvey took her in his arms, and they began to sway.
You know, in my next life, Harvey, I'm going to be more organized. Do everything I meant to do this time around. I mean it.
Elvira, if you come back, I promise I'll wait for you. I promise. Harvey kissed her hand and smiled at her wise face. He smiled for a long time.
Thank you, dear. And now, if you don't mind, I'd like to be alone.
Harvey nodded understandingly, kissed her cheek, and left. As out in the hall, Ken was hiding in the shadows. Remaining unseen, Ken let Harvey walk down the hall and out the door. Ken leaned against the wall, his eyes vacant. He was in another world. The next morning, Ken's apartment. The sun was shining, but the curtains were drawn. Harvey sat studying an old Andy Griffith show. The story ended, and Harvey's laughter filled the dark room. Suddenly Ken came in, burdened with a backpack and groceries. He glowered at Harvey, who was feeding his fat face. Ken said nothing, but instead made all kinds of aggravated and womanish noises as he turned on the lights and opened the curtains. Ken, what's the problem? No problem. Nothing is wrong, Harvey. It's a gorgeous day. In fact, I've already been to 2 classes, gotten an A on my exam, been to the store, gotten vegetables for stir-fry. In fact, the store was jammed with people buying groceries and planning meals and hurrying back to work with their salads, living full, rich lives. Harvey turned and eyeballed Ken. You're upset with me. Why would I be upset? Ken opened the freezer door and slammed it again. Damn it, now I am upset. You have eaten all my 0 bars. Look, I'm sorry, Ken. I didn't know it was such a big deal. I'll buy you more 0 bars if it means that much to you. Oh, they didn't mean that much to me. That's not the point. The point is, when I come home from a day of classes, Harvey, I like to be able to open the freezer and get myself a frozen 0 bar. It's one of the simple joys of my life, and I think it's damn inconsiderate of you to eat them all without so much as a thank you, Ken, and don't bother to replace them, because you'd probably steal them anyway. And you don't want hot frozen 0 bars? Don't start with me, Harvey. My neck is tensing up. Over a candy bar, Ken. Think about it. No, over 6 candy bars. There was a whole package in there, and now there's just some very cold cellophane. Ken, I think this is more than just 0 bars. I hate to think of you burying all this rage where you could become one of those nuts who goes into a post office with an Uzi. That's something else I hate. You always get sarcastic whenever I'm upset, Harvey. It's just a big joke, isn't it? You're right. I'm sorry. Go on. Okay, my cup of noodles. Those are gone, too. I study late at night. I get hungry. I like to have my cup of noodles, but I can't because you've eaten them all. Ken paced, his fury building. And in the process, you dribble and slop, and I find dried-up noodles sticking on my throw pillows. Ken, I didn't know things were that bad between us. And another thing, you ever plan to get off your ass and get a job? Harvey dropped his wry smile. Now he was the one who was mad. Ken, I have a job in case you haven't noticed. I mean a real job. It is a real job. I go there 6 days a week. I serve meals and clean rooms and empty bedpans. I take care of people. I give them a laugh. My being there makes a difference. And if all that doesn't make it a real job, well, oh, forget it. Harvey, I think it's great what you do, but you aren't even thinking about getting a job that pays money? Harvey started packing his duffel bag. Ugh! I knew it would come up sooner or later. The M word. You know, the night you found me in the closet, I told you I didn't want to come here. I was happy. You practically forced me, Ken. I'm broke, I said, and you said, just till you get back on your feet. Well, I got news for you. Maybe I like crawling. I like being irresponsible, answering to nobody, doing exactly what I want. You missed the point, Harvey. It's not the money. It's the principle. Oh, right. Whenever people say it's not the money, it's the principle, it's always the money. Harvey threw open the door. Where are you going? Back to the supply closet. I was happy there. Oh, come on, Harvey. Don't do that. Look, I won't bring it up again, okay? Harvey stopped and eyed Ken warily. You know, I'm going to be the exact same person I am now if I stay. Ken nodded solemnly. Harvey tossed his bag in the corner. And then his eyes twinkled. "Okay, Ken, now ask me nicely what I made for you today."
What? What did you make?
And then Harvey pulled out a tiny little patchwork quilt and handed it to Ken. "It's for the dollhouse bed."
You made this?
"Yeah, I thought it'd be a nice touch."
Oh, Harvey, it's wonderful.
It's almost done, you know. I only have to wire the electricity. Gosh, I sure hope Lisa likes it. She will love it, you romantic fool. Harvey, I'm going to go put this on the dollhouse bed now. Ken bopped into his bedroom. Harvey leaned back to watch the next Andy Griffith episode. He saw some stray noodles on a pillow, and he wiped them away. Later that afternoon, Harvey sashayed down the hall. He saw Dr. Goldblum in his office. "Good morning, Dr. Goldblum."
Harvey. Good morning, Harvey.
Goldblum's cheerfulness threw Harvey off. Something was wrong. "You're certainly in a good mood this morning, Doctor."
That's right, and you know why? 'Cause on Friday at exactly 4 p.m., you, Harvey, will have served your 200 hours and you're out of my hair for good.
"You're serious, sir? My public service hours are up?"
Damn right. Why the hell do they send you guys here anyway? Whatever happened to making you pick up trash on the highway?
"Sir, if I wanted to stay on as a volunteer, that would be okay?"
After the stunts you pulled? Hell no. I'm thinking of hiring guards so you can't come sneaking around with your strippers and your contraband. You think I don't know about the scotch you slipped Jasper Rollins? Hell, that's probably what killed him. Nope, no way, buddy. You are history.
"You mean after Friday I'm barred from Glenvale?"
You bet. And Friday night, I'm going out to celebrate.
Next morning, 7:30 a.m., a palatial home. Harvey stood on a perfectly manicured lawn, grinning. He looked at the morning paper on the stoop and checked his watch. The front door opened. A man stepped out in his bathrobe. It was Judge Jensen. On cue, Harvey unzipped his fly. "Oh, Judge! Good morning, Judge Jensen." The judge stared in horror as Harvey pissed on the roses. A few minutes later, a police car screeched into the judge's driveway. A uniform got out, looked at Harvey, and then at the furious judge. Harvey smiled at the cop. "Good morning, Officer Stemple." Glenvale. Harvey walked into Dr. Goldblum's office. Goldblum looked up in horror as Harvey tossed the court papers on the desk. "Good morning, Doc. Guess what? I've been reassigned." Elvira was putting her hair up for the day in a French twist. Harvey walked in with a bunch of roses for her, perhaps from the judge's lawn. "Good morning, Elvira." She turned around, surprised to see Harvey. "Good morning, Harvey. Good morning." And later, after Harvey had dutifully done all of his chores, he wheeled his way to Elvira's room, where he found her waiting, smiling, looking out once again, not at him, but at the setting sun. Wordlessly, Harvey set things up for story hour. He produced a bottle and poured a glass for himself and for Elvira. And then Ken also poked his head in. He sat with his Diet Cola, his pencil poised to take notes, waiting for Elvira to begin. And as Elvira looked at the battered old Depression photos, remembering, she handed them round to Ken and Harvey. Ken stared at them, but Harvey fell into them.